right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar over your lunch hour. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day today. We have a jam-packed session today. We're going to talk about AI agents and how to build them. We're going to cover the gambit of really what they are, some of the foundational concepts. We're going to have a GCP demo with Corbin, and we'll introduce him in a minute. And then I'll be able to show something a little bit more under the hood if you're looking at customizing it yourself. So with that being said, thank you so much for everyone coming with us today, and we'll make sure to get this recording to everyone when this is done. We do have a Q&A section at the end of this as well, so feel free to put Q&As along the way, and we'll get to them at the end. So we're going to do a quick introductions. We're going to talk about the AI Agent 101, really what they are. Again, we mentioned some of the foundational concepts and also what are the different components that power them as well. We do have a GCP demo with their AI Agent Builder. Then we're going to talk a little bit about extending AI agents themselves and what does that mean? What are some of the tools? We'll introduce ChromaDB, LangChain, Hugging Face, as well as Gemini powered by GCP, and then have a quick demo, and then we'll have the Q&A at the end of that. So getting into the introductions, my name is Justin Ritchie. I'm the VP of Data and AI at Nerdery. Really have been at the forefront of scaling these solutions. And before data scientist was even a term, we were business intelligence analysts. And as we've taken different variety of roles, AI has been something that I've been incredibly passionate about. It's what I studied in graduate school and just really love helping cross-functional teams becoming more data-driven as well. We also joined from Google with Corbin Graves. And Corbin, I'll let you give a quick intro on yourself.
Hey, thanks, Justin. So as he mentioned, I'm Corbin Graves. I'm a customer engineer here at Google in the public sector. I kind of help state and local government agencies as well as some higher ed institutions reach their cloud goals and focus in on AI and ML and as well as data analytics. So really excited about the demo today.
Yeah, and we're really excited to have kind of a co-presentation today, and normally we'll do one side or the other, and just really great to see this come together with the Google public team as well. So we're really excited about that. So we're going to kind of get into the Agent 101, and as every great webinar starts, it's a vanity metric. So we're going to give you a high level of 92% of Fortune 500 companies have adopted some form of Gen AI. A lot of companies are waiting to see where this is going to go. Is this going to be able to happen? But this new buzzword of AI agents is quickly coming up. And we've talked about prompt engineering and how to make Gen AI more impactful. But as we get into AI agents themselves, we get into the flow engineering, which is a little bit of a different concept as well. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that comes. And that's kind of what brought us here today for the webinar. As we start thinking, wanted to define this. So this will be one of the few slides that I actually do read word for word. So we're going to say an AI agent is an autonomous software entity designed to perceive its environment, to make decisions, take actions, and to achieve specific goals with limited to no human direct intervention. So really, what does that mean in parsing that out is it's able to create and make decisions, and it can learn from the context and also the memory that is stored within inside of that program. This could be anything from booking a trip. This could be buying a pair of shoes and having someone be your personal shopper as an AI agent. It's really that augmentation of that, but it's also limited in how the scope of that has been defined. So this isn't going to be a bunch of Terminators running around in the end of times. This is meant to achieve very specific tasks. This is never going to be a one agent to rule them all. They typically work best when they solve very, very specific things. Really, we've talked about Gen AI, AI agents. You've heard of LLMs, chatbots. Really what's the difference of that? So an AI agent is really the umbrella term. It, really refers to any program that can interact intelligently within its environment. This can include chatbots, LLMs, and other AI systems. And it's all about the perception of that. So you can have a chatbot that allows you to have customer service. And, that is a component of an AI agent. And within the GCP environment, Dialogflow, for example, allows a lot of Gen AI components that flow into that as well. I don't like doing a Venn diagram, so we wanted to show a little chart here, but like really kind of getting into that multimodality is a really big push for where AI agents are getting their most uptick right now, is being able to not only images, but text and video. As I think about the five components of an AI agent, it's really first is autonomous, something that you're making that isn't hard coded by its design. It's able to perceive and gather information of its environment within the confines of the structure. It can reason. That could both be from a flow engineering perspective, but then also components like RAG that we'll talk about in a second, and then being able to tie that into embeddings in a vector database. And then it can act. Not only is it able to make external API calls, but it can do function calls as well, and being able to tie that information directly back into the AI agent that is a seamless user experience. And also can learn. How is it going to be able to improve based on what it does? And we'll show a lane chain demo as well of showing kind of behind the scenes what's happening. As we start thinking about AI agents, if you were to Google this when you get off this webinar, it's everything from robotics to manufacturing. It's really the wide gambit. We're thinking about this through a customer agent, an employee agent, and knowledge agent. So what we mean by like customer agents is everything from product support, ordering, personal shoppers, book travel flights. Like it can do a lot of those aspects. But then think of employee agents as well. So think about employee onboarding, invoice management, fulfillment. As that begins to take more of a hold, AI agents can automate a lot of those tasks. If those of you have talked about RPA in the past, it does have a lot of similarity to that. But there are HR software that are actually having AI agents kind of as like onboarding in quote unquote employees, AI enabled employees, which is kind of an interesting concept in the market. And then we think of like knowledge agents, something that I do in my day to day as, a data scientist could be automated with an AI agent. And there's already been companies that have started and been acquired since then that are meant to do very specific tasks, whether it's legal documentation review, whether it's market research or sales agents and someone who's doing outreach. That's an AI agent that you've never heard of before. And there's voice capabilities that come with that as well. So, really thinking about a high level architecture, it's really an agent UI. So that could be anything from Flutter, React, Streamlit, or any custom modules. And it's really kind of breaking this down from prompt, defining the tools, examples. The LLM is something that is referenced to the agent that is used to power the responses, but they are independent systems. And then thinking about it from a data store, from functions, extensions, as well as the data stores themselves. And then what's kind of powering that is that API layer. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but really the function call aspect. But it can accomplish anything from chatbots, build conversational AIs, drag and drop interfaces. It's really allowing you to really customize that front end of that aspect. As we think about Google specifically, Google's been in this space a very long time. And where AI agents now seem to be the hottest buzzword, this is going to be something from a dialogue flow perspective that really has started all the way back to 2019 and having intents and flows and webhooks. And even before dialogue flow was dialogue flow, yes. And being able to tie that in with voice and, they're offering with CCAI, which is context center. And then looking as it started from 2022 and 2023 is some of those generative features. And the first LLM to get launched was the Bison LLM, and that's a pre-built components that are attached to that as well. And then as the Vertex AI kind of got a lot of foothold, this is where Gemini got introduced late last year. This is where RAG support and being able to provide examples like few shot learning, really those industry templates, and then multi-region support as well. And then as we start thinking about multimodal AI agents as well, so we think about Gemini Pro being able to ingest images, text, and video support, getting into more of that fine tuning and more examples from that. And today we also have Corbin. Obviously, he's going to give a quick introduction, then he has a demo for us. So Corbin, I'll hand it off to you.
All right. And Justin, should I share my screen from here?
Yep.
Give me one moment. Okay, let me know when you can see that. Excellent. So just wanted, before we dive into the GCP console and actually see what it's like to build out an agent, I wanted to go over some of the customer challenges that we've seen just out in the field and in my role as a customer engineer. These are about 5 of the questions that you hear the most often about how you can make production ready agents But I think the key word here, even though isn't in bold, is easily, right? Um, being able to get a quick time to value and get, value from this product without having to have, the background of myself or Justin, going to grad school, learning about these things, being able to stand something up using just the data that you bring to the table. So that's something that you're able to do inside of Agent Builder. Um, Grounding. So basically the idea that you have a question and you want your users to come in and be able to ask about a certain set of topics, right? So if this is outside of the realm of what you provided the AI model with, you expect the model to say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that," instead of going to like the far stretches of the internet to come up with the best answer that it can. You want it to be grounded on your enterprise data and in that enterprise truth. And then next we see the control and customization. So this is something that's actually been enhanced throughout the last, I'll say 3 to 6 months within this very product. It's gone from search and conversation to all of these kind of iterations, and now we're at Agent Builder, where you can customize it more. I'll show you within the demo how you can change and use different models um, based on the responses that you're getting, and then mitigate the risk of hallucinations. That kind of goes back to the grounding aspect, but also the ability to rate the responses. So as you build an agent and then start to test out these questions and the responses you're getting, you're able to say yes, this is what we were expecting, or no, this isn't the best type of answer. And there's other features I'll be able to show you in just a moment. And then lastly, security and privacy. That's huge. I happen to work in the public sector, so government agencies and really anyone that's looking to build with AI, they want to make sure that their information isn't being released to the public and also isn't being used by Google to help train models and things like that. So I won't be able to show another slide, but it is really about a secure layer or shield around your environment. So you're able to use the benefits of the LLMs that we've spent years training and getting to be at their powerful state without having that data go back to Google or out to the outside world. No one would be able to ask a certain question and somehow get information that you inputted into these models. So here, this is just a couple of things that Agent Builder is able to do from the orchestration layer. Allows you to create and launch and then manage a lot of these agents. So the ability to do that at scale. That's a question that comes up a lot. This is nice for maybe one-off scenarios, but how can we scale this? So the ability to do this with no code, or if you have a little bit of coding expertise, customize it more. And if you are a coder, you can use the API and actually get really granular with how you build these things out. And then I won't spend too much time on this. We mentioned it in the previous slide, but grounding and augmenting the solution. So grounding it with Google search, so you have fresher data, and then making sure it's relevant to the information that you're trying to provide. And lastly, function calling, I think, is a great feature that's available now. So if you have an API that you want to use that capability along with your agent to carry out tasks, to pull back in additional information, you're able to do that now as well. So I am going to jump into the Google Cloud console now and show you what it looks like to actually build out one of these agents. Right. Okay, so now we are inside of the Google Cloud Console. This is just what it looks like when you first sign in. You have quick access to some of our more popular services, but today I think we're going to start with is going to the Agent Builder section. So you can just at the top type that in, and it may just take a second to load since I'm on a video stream. All right, here we are. So now we are in the Agent Builder product within Google Cloud. You are able to create apps, what we call data stores. So this is where you would put the information that you want the agent to answer questions based off of. You're also able to monitor the results, to monitor error rates and things of that nature. But I think for the purpose of this demo, we're just going to jump into the app and show you what that looks like to actually get started and create something. So we have a few options. You have the option to create a Google-like search, right? Just based off of your data. Where, just imagine going to your search bar in Chrome and typing in a question, but it's only going to give you answers relevant to the information that you provided. So if that's a handbook for your company or a research paper or group of research papers, it'll only provide answers based off of that. And that goes for, all of these different modalities. Chat is more conversational. Think of it, some similar to a chat bot, recommendation engine. And then actually what I'm going to show you today is the agent version of this app, which is where you can extend beyond just a conversation like piece, and that's where you connect to different data sources, business system tools, and things like that. So we won't actually go through the step by step of building the app, actually have something created, but I'll just show you really quickly. If we were to do that, first we would need to create a data source or a data store to connect to it. And we see at the top, website content, BigQuery, and cloud storage. For a while, those were like the big three, and in a lot of ways they still are, but the only three that were available. Using a public website or company website, tapping into a data warehouse in a table, and pulling in that information, or PDFs and Word documents and things like that through cloud storage. But now we can see a lot more connectivity that's come out. A lot of it's still in preview, but you can expect to see this in the coming months. So healthcare API, Google Drive, your Gmail. um, Imagine being able to link to your organization's calendar and ask about upcoming meetings and things like that. This one is actually pretty important. API. So that just opens up a world of capabilities. Any APIs that you might have access to, you would be able to plug into a solution like this. So I will switch over to an agent that has already been built. So after you create an app, connect to data store, this is the page that you would come to if you're building out an agent. Um, and if you'll notice, I've basically gotten the agent started and what it's supposed to do. So I won't read it word by word, but basically you're an agent that's here to answer questions about libraries. This is actually similar to a customer use case that I've worked on myself. So um, actually gave it an example. This is kind of an example of few shot prompting or one shot prompting. So instead of just jumping in and asking a question, I provided an example question and then an example answer, just to show the agent, hey, this is the type of response we want to receive. And quickly, I want to call out the fact that on the right side, you can actually select your generative model, right? So Gemini Pro is what's set by default. We can switch over to Gemini Flash, which is useful in chat-like settings and things like that. But what you can do is test out these questions, and if one of these models is responding better than the other, you have the ability to decide, okay, I want to create that agent around, for example, the Gemini Flash model. So I am going to throw in a question. Let's see. All right. So I asked the address to a library, and I won't go too deep into it, but basically I picked a library in Georgia City, and I didn't even need to specify the name of the library because it's actually not just called the Keratin Library, but it's able to find that address and then present it to me. It can do the same with phone numbers or any other questions that I might have. Um, Another feature that I just decided to ask in the instructions on how I want the agent to respond is detecting language. So I just put in a question in Spanish. Oh, okay. Well, it actually, in this case, ended up answering in English. But as you continue to train it, it will start to respond in Spanish. And that's an example of, okay, I might want to give it a preview of, hey, I've asked a question in Spanish, answer in Spanish. But you're able to make those distinctions inside of the instructions. Let's see. And I will oh, yep, here it is. See, it's getting better. It's actually gave an answer. Um, One more thing. I know we're running close to the end of my portion, but I wanted to show you basically how I was able to even get this information about the library details and things like that. I was able to connect to a data store um, that has all of these details through what we call a tool. So if we switch over to the tools, I will choose to create one. I just want to go over the different types. So open API, if you have, this is where if you have an API that has certain functionality you want to use, you would be able to choose this option, write a description, and then put in an API schema. So this really extends the ability of the agent builder and allows you to do a world of things on top of the websites or the PDF that you might want to provide. All right. And on top of that, we have data stores and also functions. So anyone familiar with cloud functions inside of Google Cloud, that can serve as a wrapper around an API, but also connect to different Google Cloud products. So if you want to be able to ask a question within this agent and have it spin up a virtual machine or run a query on a database or any number of things, you would be able to create that connectivity through this function calling within the agent builder. And with that, I will pass it back over to Justin.
Thanks, Corbin. And as Corbin mentioned, the Open API is a open source framework library, and how the actual standardization occurs, not Open AI. Just as a, I think I was in a talk last week, and I think that confused some people at the end of it. So, but awesome stuff, Corbin. Thank you so much. We're going to go into extending AI agents. And what does that mean? Obviously, as we look at the GCP components and how to build the AI agents, there's a lot of ways that you can extend that functionality, whether it's enterprise grade solutions and how you want to look at that. They're really the three main components that drive into that. This is a new term, but it's called agentic workflows, and being able to tailor the LLM and retrieval tasks if you want a little bit more fine-grained performance around chunking, retrieval, the embeddings, how all of that actually occurs behind the scenes. A good example is, from law offices, those documents themselves are highly specific to their business in that industry that might need a custom solution versus out of the box. Data in security control, being able to have a little bit more fine-grained level detail. As you saw in Corbin's demo as well, they do support the FHIR as a data source, which is a healthcare standard. And that's a great way to get started as well. But if you need more sensitive information to be protected, custom integration. So having function calling and preview right now is massive from the AI agent builder, but also being able to tie that in for more enterprise grade traffic might be something you would look into. As we think about RAG, we talked about this in a webinar about 2 months ago now, but RAG stands for Retriever Augmented Generation. And that really has to do with how something that's not in an LLM. So a lot of times a LLM is trained on a certain subset of data. A big shout out to Gemini Pro in particular, with many millions in their token window, has actually made the need for RAG a little bit less. But where RAG can help with performance is the specific domain examples that are driving your AI agent. So this little circle icon in the middle, this is really what's powering the demo that we'll show in a little bit. But then also being able to have that performance from LangChain, that you can provide those rank prompts and workflows to guide your agent to be best in class. As a high level RAG architecture, you have some source data, you load that into an embedding model that then becomes a vector database. We'll show ChromaDB as an example here, and then interfacing that with the LLM. And then the Gen AI app is essentially the AI agent workflows that can begin to interact with that as well. Giving a shout out to LangChain. This is kind of the peanut butter and jelly for Gemini. So think about LangChain as it's a framework for developing applications. So, if you're a front end web developer, this is something that's going to come very intuitive to you because it allows you to build those environments. It's not just a front end framework. They have an incredibly wide product portfolio. Some of it's open source as well, and we'll show in a second. You can deploy directly on their cloud or on GCP. You can have different integrations and components that will power your AI agent responses. There's the LangChain component itself that allows you to create different modules. LangGraph is essentially allowing you to create better RAG architectures that can pull that data from a graph-based data architecture. And then LangSmith, which is a debugging, playground, and monitoring tool that we'll show in the demo as well. As I start thinking about if I were to start from scratch, what would be the components I would look at? First is like the setup, really defining the agent architecture, sub-agents and tools, and then really defining the goal. As you saw in Corbin's demo, having one or two few shot examples. If you just go directly to Gemini, that's called a zero shot example as well. But as you get into the few shot examples, that's going to be able to give you a highly specialized. But if you're running 15, 20, 50 different examples in the application tool itself, you might need to think about breaking up that agent workflow. And as we start thinking about how this ecosystem is growing, it's all about managing multiple agents and really that enterprise orchestration between different agents that do different things. We gave an example of booking travel. You might have one that just does the planning and the research for you, and then you might have another one that just does the booking for you, for example, just to give a much better consumer experience. And that might be completely independent systems that power that technology, but the user might only see one, for example. As you start thinking about developing an AI agent, it's really the simulation. Is it providing the goals and the prompts? That's where the memory and the context and the perception really have a lot to do with that. And then from a deploy perspective, obviously GCP can host this from a custom-based development, whether it's on Cloud Run. There's distributed computing systems like Ray that allow you to begin to pull that across multiple regions and adding more enterprise functionality. But the most important aspect is logging and monitoring conversations, because as this becomes kind of a black box to the users, want to make sure that you're not introducing any ethics or security concerns as well as this gets powered. As we talked about, zero-shot programming is completely out of the gate. You're using something with no context. It's essentially just the LLM itself. Few-shot programming, that was the AI agent builder, is the best example of that. And function calling, as we've seen, that it's allowing you to interact with different APIs where you might not have direct API access itself. You actually can provide and simulate what a person would do to get that API data in an application. Kind of a note on vector databases. This is what powers the memory. It also helps with the semantic similarity search. The chunking strategy that goes into the embeddings that power a vector database has a big component of that. So we mentioned a law office. If they have a 180 PDF page that has different, you can structure that on each paragraph could be a chunk, and then that would load into the vector database, and then those embeddings are created automatically based on the structure, and then it creates an index. Corbin's slide before he got into the demo talked about Llama Index. Llama Index, as well as Hugging Face, offers tools that you can provide that indexing so that retrieval from a RAG architecture is more improved. We talked about chunking, so we'll kind of go into this a little bit more. So, you can really break it down out of the gate. You can let the function do what it does automatically. But really, if you want to start thinking about improving your chunking strategy, this is a whole art in of itself, right? And what attracted me to data science way back when was it has just much quantitative skills as it does qualitative, because it's about the storytelling and the subjectivity of it that I really fell in love with data. And chunking kind of has like a similar niche in of itself, is that you have to decide the logical breakpoints. So whether it's a sentence or a paragraph or content that is somewhat related to each other, it all has to do with how you tell the program to ingest that. You can adjust the chunk size, and there's also a concept of overlapping. You can have different size in the chunk, and then also be able to, at the post-processing component, that will allow you to create a smoother transitions that you actually can rejoin them based on smaller chunks, for example. So it's not just the first time that you load this. This was an example code that I had. This is going to allow you to actually merge back chunks, so then it has better optimization. But for people that are looking to build their own custom Gen AI applications and AI agents in this instance, it's absolutely vital to understand how your data is parsed and chunked into a vector database, because it will have vast difference on your performance for how that data is retrieved in the application itself. We talked about function calling. I'm super excited about this one. And the reason for that is because historically we would build an agent or a Gen AI app, and then there would be an integration. And you put your API key inside of your integration button that directly talks to WhatsApp or different communication or Salesforce, or being able to look at those different components. But what if you can't directly put the API key directly into your AI agent? What if there's a VPC and only a couple people in the world have access to what that data can produce? This is really where the simulation component of an AI agent becomes very vital, is it creates something that's the function, and that essentially allows you to work directly with that API, and it simulates what a actual person would interact with an API would do. And you would say, get flights, and then it would actually make that function call in the API for you, rather than just having untethered API access itself. This is really the when and the how, and then that gets you to a better outcome for people that are using this. So as the demo, we're going to show a Google Colab notebook. I'm going to walk through each component step by step. But really the three takeaways here are: we're going to have Gemini Pro Power in this LLM perspective. We're leveraging an open source technology called ChromaDB, but we are also able to leverage any other GCP product that can leverage that has vector functionality. BigQuery had announced that at Google Next that they're starting to support vector databases. So by this time next year, I'm assuming that we'll have to reskin this to be for BigQuery as well. But ChromaDB is a good open source tool right now. And then LangChain, really the 5 components are develop, collaborate, test, deploy, and monitor. All right, let's get into the demo. So what I did is I loaded 2 PDFs themselves, and obviously being a GCP, we loaded the year of 2023. So we have Sundar's note. And the reason why I wanted to show the raw PDF versus more of a 10K, which is just straight text, is actually this having more images on here does degrade performance of that, how that data gets parsed, because there's a lot of different formatting and different fonts. And that was kind of intentional, that would allow us to show how all that worked. And just for brevity's sake, I also included NVIDIA in here as well. So as you see, there's a lot of images and a lot of text, a lot of articles, but then they talk about different business segments and where things are going. So with that being said, we'll get into the Google Colab notebook, and then we'll also talk about Langsmith as well. So as we start at the very top of this Colab, again, this is not something that you would make a production ready. You would want to use something like Visual Studio Code or a development environment that has all your environmental variables stored. Just for the purposes of this demo, this is going to allow us to do this. But having our pip installs, from a LangChain perspective, obviously it's very heavy on this component, because what it's essentially doing is you're able to create your different recursion character splitting. You're able to have your PDF loads, and then also all the RAG architecture functions are within inside of the LangChain development environment. And then allowing different API keys, as you see in the left side, you can store those as secrets. So then we're not just exposing APIs once this recording is made broadly available. You can create your different source folders. And what this function is doing here is it's creating your text splitter. These are the separators from the chunking perspective. This is just broad swath, just providing it by new lines. And we talked about some of the subjectivities. You actually can make this a lot more custom and optimize how many chunks there are, and also the overlap perspective as well. And this will kind of get you to where you're able to see the performance degradation or improvement as this kind of gets fine tuned. We leveraged Hugging Face from an embeddings model. You could easily use Gemini in this instance as well, but just trying to leverage a couple different tools here. Being able to create your vector store from a retriever function, this comes native baked within LangChain. And then I'm essentially calling the LLM as a Google generative AI chat service as well. And then from there, I'm instantiating the LangChain environment, be able to pull that directly in there. And then this is kind of where the magic happens. So what this is essentially doing is it's pulling all the content from that documents. It's creating those lists into a string that allows us to search for that as well. So as we start thinking about where this is going to be able to go, is that this is essentially instantiating the recursive character text splitter. And then this runnable pass-through is essentially how it's iterating through the data itself. And then you're able to put that document into how that will be queried. So as we looked at this before, so you could enter the title. So you could say very broadly, what was NVIDIA's revenue? And what it's essentially doing is it's invoking that question. And as you see, there's no zero shot or a few shot prompting here as well. This is really where your performance, and especially as we talked about the multiple modalities, whether images or text or video, is going to be very important from that aspect. This is just going to be straight up text. So the response here was NVIDIA's total revenue for the year was this, and then their revenue was that. And then it actually added additional components of their revenue last year was this, and then it shows strong performance across data center, gaming, and automotive. We can show another question here is, what do NVIDIA and Google have in common? So why this is very valuable is it actually shows the overlap of the PDF. So let's say we have thousands of PDFs. You can't search that naturally without having to have a program like this. This has that context and that meaning behind it. And this is where the grounding that Corbin mentioned earlier is very impactful, as well as the long-term memory versus the short-term memory that we have not gotten to in this AI agent demo. But that's really where you're going to be able to store a lot of that context so it can kind of learn from itself as well. It does give a very broad that they're both based in the same city, and being able to look at the technology sector. And as we start thinking about another question, as I said, does Google manufacture chips like NVIDIA? Obviously, NVIDIA is a chip manufacturer from a GPU. Being able to tie that in, Google technically has TPU chips, but not explicitly called out. I did want to show another example of what was Google's highest revenue department. So it'll say Google's highest revenue was Google services. This is essentially Google ads, Google subscriptions, platform devices. That's a major chunk of Google's revenue. Being able to tie that in there as well. So there's the reason why it gives the warning is because I hit my token window, and in classic fashion of showing the demo itself, I didn't want to have it error out as well. So kind of encapsulating this demo as well as this is essentially out of the box that you can leverage within LangChain that gives you that retriever based function that you could pull into different documents. It's very extensible. The one thing that's not in here is there's not a lot of error logging. So if something errors out, you're not going to really know what happens. So with that being said, I did write something like this. This would be a little bit more of like the next step after this demo. And you're going to be able to format that data, and it has different errors. So when you create these different classes from an inheritance perspective, it's going to say this document doesn't have a page content attribute. And you could talk about the retrieving documents errored out. The formatting, it could say that there was an error within the prompting itself. You could say that there was an error with the response. So when I was writing this, admittedly a couple of days ago, there was an issue with inside of the inheritance of how it called one of these functions itself. And that allowed you to figure out that, oh, it was how I was referencing that as well. And then it does give you the enhanced rag here. So then you're essentially pulling that back in, and then you can look at things like that. So I'm going to show a quick demo of Langsmith as well. And what Langsmith does is it essentially is your logging and monitoring aspect from the GCP AI agent demo as well that Corbin showed. They also offer a very similar function to this. This one is a little bit different that you could actually have a little bit more extensibility, but you can run this environment with inside of GCP2. So for example, one ran for 67 seconds, so it showed the latency of that. And the reason why is because I hit my token window max because this is an open source tool. I have not paid for a professional version of this, but we can look at within NVIDIA's revenue. So then it will say, what was NVIDIA's revenue? It could look at the different components from an output. So it could say, this is exactly what it showed in the Google Colab notebook as well. But it actually can start showing the context as well. So it could say where it found the data in the documents. And from a chat prompt templates as well, we can actually show how do we want to optimize that response and how do we actually know the decisions that it's making. And that's really kind of the magic of AI agent and building those is you actually can look at how the retriever is happening, how the text is formatted, what types of assumptions it's making. And then from a chat demo perspective, this will pull in the output as well. So this is essentially what is being passed to the Google Gemini API that then gets passed back. So as you see, it says input. So then what's happening is within the lane chain RAG environment, it will say, you are a human assistant for question answering tasks. Use the following pieces of retrieved context. If you don't know the answer, just say you don't know. Use 3 sentences maximum and keep the answer concise. What was NVIDIA's revenue? Year ended this. And as you can see that it shows the context, all of this is generated with inside of the Lang or the Lang chain RAG call itself. I didn't add any of this. It was able to interact with the Gemini API environment itself, which is pretty magical. And you can tune this as well. So you can add the different context, the different features, the components that power that to give different responses. So when Corbin showed English versus Spanish, this would be where that would happen as well. And then you can look at kind of going back of where things failed. You know, if this one timed out on me, I ended up having to shut that one down. But being able to look at how does all this kind of interstitially connect to each other is pretty valuable. So that being said, that's the demo from extending that from a collab. And then now we'll kind of talk about how do we want to kind of wrap this up, but then also really we talked about a lot today. So, you know, we covered the AI agents in GCP. Corbin showed a great demo, but then also looking at if you wanted to take it a step further and, you know, function calling is a big takeaway from this and highly recommend that as well. But, you know, looking, how do we provide some of this RAG and lane chain components? Because, you know, having attended GCP Next several months ago now, it was all the buzz at that conference and saying, how do we deploy enterprise grade AI agents that allow us to query our own data from a company perspective, but then also pull data from the internet for an employee experience perspective? And, you know, that's really the genesis of how this chat came together for this webinar content. You know, kind of thinking about query events and events as well. I showed you that in lane chain from the Smith environment, but it really kind of comes down to question, thought, action input, observation, and then the final answer. And then really where this gets extended even further is, you know, this is just booking a flight for an example, but if you want to look at the flights, you know, having Google search enabled, you actually going directly against that, which Gemini is fantastic at that, obviously, but then also being able to do the different calculations and those different integrations that those function calls could then work inside of the LLM as well. Kind of a couple recommendations before you start on your journey getting into this is, you know, highly recommend leveraging the AI agent. It's in preview right now, but, you know, that's going to be where you're going to find 90+% of your user functionality to get that. And managing the infrastructure is a very time intensive process. And, you know, getting everything stood up without having an ROI or a business metric around what success is That's where I've seen a lot of the Gen AI projects not be successful, is if we don't tie it to a business value and really what our goals are of doing it. And I think there's a lot of shiny object syndrome of like, let's just do this. And without having a plan and a goal first, some of these projects aren't successful. So just highly recommend getting something stood up, allowing you to get stakeholder management involved, obviously having different departments, getting aligned on really what this is, from a trust perspective and security, and really that hardened aspect of like, how is the data coming in here? Like, those are all questions you're going to have to answer first before you start worrying about your Langsmith deployments as well. Flows really are the future of how this is being powered. So right now we've heard a lot about prompt engineering, few shot examples, but really this flow engineering architecture is going to become more and more commonplace. So as RAG had a major impact on how you deployed these types of applications even last year, now it's not as much, because you're having the Gemini Pro environment that has such a large token window that it doesn't necessitate the need for as much RAG architecture on the front end, that it actually can provide a lot of that context already from a search capacity. And that token window is going to allow you to have a lot longer memory stored to have a better performance for your users. And then third is really logging and monitoring. And that's really why I wanted to show that Langsmith environment, and within the GCP agent environment as well, they have a very similar functionality. But this is where security ethics, there's always going to be that like, well, what is it doing? What is it doing with my data? And being able to show not only how it took an input, interacted with an OLM, and then gave an output to a user, but it actually shows the reasoning behind that. That's going to allow it when you tell someone across the table, really that, this is the decision it made, kind of giving that trust relationship in the tool itself. Because if you were to say this AI can learn, for people that aren't in this every day like we are on this webinar, it's going to kind of cause some unease feeling, right? And like making sure it's doing what you need it to do. And that's going to be very impactful on that as well. I'm going to close with the godfather himself, Andrew Ng. And, just kind of a quote that he has is, the AI agent workflows are driving mass AI progress this year. It's really building on even more in the foundational modeling perspective. It's an important trend. Andrew Ng's online academy, Deep Learning AI, is something I spend a lot of time, just professional development on. And just knowing that the foundational models that were existed previously, as you made a new one, essentially necessitated ever to need to use it again. And you had to completely rebuild it. And these trainings cost anywhere from $50 to $100 million. And it was a very expensive process. But as the windows of these new models coming out, this is going to put more impactful benefits on the AI agents, because that development is going to push that adoption. Because as our GPTs get more and more advanced, it's going to make the AI agent development ecosystem increase even more. So that was just a big shout out there. So with that being said, Corbin, if you're still on, we're going to take a couple questions. But again, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. In classic fashion, I said we'd be about 50 minutes to Hallie, who's our marketing director, and we're at about 49 and a half minutes. So, that's great. So, but again, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to pull, so Tani had a question for the slides. Absolutely. I can share the notebook URL as well. That's why I made the secrets. And Jorge asked about the meaning of sub-agents. So there's a lot of new terms that are coming up. When you kind of look up this industry within AI agents, the term is like multiple agents at once, but then typically what they call it is sub-agents, essentially many agents that provide very finite tasks that roll up into a more organizational, more of an enterprise strategy around how AI agents are. So for example, like I mentioned earlier in the webinar, having a booking service for travel, you could have an AI agent that just does the personal travel research for you and finds, like, let's say, pulls data from Google Flights and provides when the best time to travel is, right? But then if you were to say, I want to book that, that will give you the ability to then interact with that other agent. So that's when you hear the concept of sub agents, and a lot of the development that's coming out of like Llama Index as well as LangChain that rolls up into the larger GCP ecosystem is absolutely going to be part of that sub agent and that orchestration. So
Yeah.
not a direct example, but if you think of like containers that power within a Kubernetes environment, they orchestrate with each other, but then also, the nodes provide different aspects of how you wrap your applications as well. Question as well, Corbin, you mentioned some of the deployment. Could you kind of give us an example of like how easy it is to push to production? You showed kind of the chat window as well, but what are some of the examples of what a production AI agent within the GCP ecosystem would look like?
Right. So what we saw today was actually, more inside of the console with a lot of these deployment options, whether it's the search or the chat or things like that. Um, Google actually provides integration for a messenger app. Like they'll give you code, so you can take an existing website, edit that website code, and basically input or import your agent. So it just pops up in the bottom corner. But that code directly ties back into your GCP environment. So it's almost like a plug and play. So kind of the few steps that we walked through today in the demo, bringing everything together and creating an agent is one more simple step simple enough if you have access to your website's code to go in and edit that and basically plug in a search or a chat. So as far as deployment, once you have it set up and tested inside of your console, it's kind of like a plug and play inside of where you want to host it.
Yeah, awesome. Corbin, we have another question for Dialogflow. If you were to be tinfoil hat, obviously in the future, how does the AI agent builder in something like Dialogflow, like where does that overlap? Kind of, is it, you think they become one product? Obviously, like this is conjecture, but like if you were to say a year from now, where do you imagine that ecosystem of those two products kind of playing with each other?
So that's a good question. I don't have a definite answer now, but that's something that even myself and my fellow customer engineers, that's something that we're wondering just further down the line because there is some overlap in capability. You started to see kind of the agent capabilities inside of Dialogflow first before kind of building out this bigger product in Agent Builder. So with that overlap, I can still see them playing well together, even if within Dialogflow, there's just something that connects you to Agent Builder, kind of connects those two products. But that still remains to be seen. This is just a very fast-paced and fast-moving environment, so I can't say exactly what's going to happen. But I would see those continuing to play well in the future.
Yeah. And shout out to Mazara. Thank you for your great questions. It's always that awkward kind of pause waiting for the questions to run in. So thank you for being our first there. To take this question, the question is, will Dialogflow ES be retired? I would say, in Corbin, I'd be curious on your take is that, Dialogflow ES is used widely in enterprises still, but it's very, it follows an incredibly different architecture. So not having flows, it's a very explicit based coding environment, Angular based as well. So just seeing the biggest difference between ES and CX, I would imagine that it won't necessarily not be retired without support. But my guess is that it would be Google's going to push as many people to the CX environment because that will have access to all the Gen AI features as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I think there's a lot of customers that I work with that are still using that ES, so want to make sure that they continue to have support. But I think the best practice would be to look towards CX just because of all of the AI capabilities that it has. That's where you would want to start if you're building something from scratch today.
Awesome. we had one more question around lane change. So as far as Corbin, I know that the AI agent preview is offering some of the infrastructure support. It's not fully there right now. Do you have kind of any visibility into how that productionalization takes place for embedding that in other applications, whether it's like a React app or have you had any of that involvement within your public sector team?
Not yet, but that's something that I expect to see in the future. And then I don't think we dove into it too much in the demo, but depending on how in the weeds a customer can get or a partner in order to help them out, using the API. So if you have an application, using tapping into the Agent Builder API and writing code that connects to it and gets your queries to the right um, part of the product, you can code that into your application. Like you mentioned, React or another language is able to do that. And there's models out there to help you generate code, and basically you give it what you're trying to accomplish in whichever coding language, and it's able to help you write that connective code to connect Agent Builder into whatever application you want to use it with.
Awesome. Well, Corbin, thank you so much for joining us today as our co-speaker. Yeah, we're really excited about the AI agent product itself. I think that's going to be as big of a shift as it was with the Vertex AI product suite itself. So that was a big reason why we wanted to talk about that. And so thank you so much for joining us today, and look forward to hearing more as that product suite becomes more broadly. And we'll wrap up the webinar for today, and just want to say thank you again for everyone that attended. We are going to give the slides as well as the code that we showed examples for. And thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.